A new poll shows the candidates in North Carolina's Senate race are virtually tied.
That's right. The poll's release comes roughly 5 weeks ahead of the midterm elections. An online survey unveiled by WRAL on Monday shows 43% of voters favor Republican Congressman Ted Budd for the Senate seat. That's only 1% more than those who prefer Democratic candidate Cheri Beasley.
Joining us now is CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. So, Caitlin, what can you tell us about Ted Budd and Cheri Beasley, about these candidates? They're within the margin of error.
That's right, and I just got back from reporting in North Carolina, talking to Cheri Beasley, we did an interview with, and also talking to voters on the ground. And this is a very tight race, and it's a very undercovered race, and mostly because neither of these candidates are these big personalities that we're seeing in some of these other spots. And so it's largely flown under the radar. But North Carolina is a place that, has been trending towards Republicans, even though it voted for Obama in 2008. It's always been a target of Democrats, but they've never really had the chance to be successful statewide in this big way. This kind of boils down to a couple of issues. Republicans there were telling me that the economy and inflation is overriding everything, and they want to focus entirely on that message. For Democrats, however, they think that the issue of abortion is going to be something that activates their base of support and also potentially can reach out to unaffiliated voters. And in North Carolina, unaffiliated voters are outpacing Republicans and Democrats, so there could be some ground to gain there. But even when I was talking to Cheri Beasley about this interview, about this dynamic, she said in the interview that she's noticed a change in the way that people are talking about abortion on the campaign trail, even in rural areas, that they're bringing it up at campaign events, which shows that this could be an issue that has a wider reach. But she also noted that the economy is still top of mind for voters there. So how she balances that dynamic could be key in determining whether she is able to be successful there. But Republicans argued that the dynamics that are helping Republicans will also help them in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, this trend and what you're talking about, abortion and the economy, just parallels so many other very close races. Nevada comes to mind, especially, among younger women or women in general, people who want to protect abortion rights. But everybody's impacted by the economy. What are the candidates doing to increase turnout, and how's turnout generally in the state?
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic that you mentioned, because we're seeing in polling that the economy remains top of mind, but when you look at what's motivating Democratic voters, abortion is their top issue. So the big question is whether that can turn out enough voters that you need, or whether, when people go to determine who they're going to vote for, whether the cost of things is just too high and overrides everything else. But what's interesting about North Carolina is you have that research triangle where we've talked about a lot of people from other states coming in, but especially post-pandemic, you've seen an influx in people moving to North Carolina. And pollsters and strategists in the state I talked to say that the campaigns really have to target those new voters, those new people who have been coming into the state who weren't born in North Carolina, coming from somewhere else. And so these are kind of the two issues that will remain to be seen how they're affecting them. But you mentioned North Carolina. Nevada is also a really key race to watch. A lot of strategists I've been talking to say that that is a big potential pickup opportunity for the Republicans.
Speaking of other tight races that are closely watched, Red and Blue's going to be further diving into these midterm races, including what's happening in Georgia. I would love to get your take on that, Caitlin.
Wow, some really interesting developments overnight, essentially, in that race. You have Herschel Walker in the Senate race, who was the Republicans' recruit. He's had a lot of baggage throughout this race, but the Daily Beast reported that he had allegedly paid an ex-girlfriend to have an abortion. And this is problematic, of course, because Herschel Walker has been defending abortion restrictions and pushing for them. And so this raises the question of hypocrisy, of course. But what's interesting to note here is that watching this over the 24 hours, Republicans have continued to defend Herschel Walker. They're continuing, they say, to pledge money in that race, and they are sticking by him despite this scandal and the others that have already plagued his campaign. And their argument is that the economy is going to override everything, and that Democrats are worse in their mind. And so that's kind of what you're seeing in the final stretch of this campaign. But it's a fascinating race to watch because Republicans do have a ripe opportunity there. But this speaks to kind of the failure to recruit effective candidates, essentially. It remains to be seen if he will be successful or not. But if he loses this race, and polls show, at least in our polling, that Reverend Warnock, the incumbent Democrat, has the edge in that race, while when you look at the governor's race, the Republican incumbent governor, Brian Kemp, is leading by a significant margin against Stacey Abrams. So you could potentially have this dynamic where voters choose a Republican for governor and a Democrat in the Senate to kind of keep that dynamic at play. But will voters abandon Herschel Walker in light of this news? We'll see. Right now, Republicans are vowing to stay by him.
Well, we're still more than a month away. I'm sure if midterms happened today, perhaps it would have been handed to Warnock in a silver platter, given so much scandal
You're right.
in 24 hours. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you.
Thank you.
And a reminder, you can stream the day's political news on Red and Blue tonight starting at 5 p.m. Eastern.